Dear friends, today I would like to share wisdom from Timeless Leadership, 18 Leadership Sutras from the Bhagwat Geeta, which is written by Professor Dr. Debasish Chatterjee. He taught leadership classes at Harvard University and at the Indian Institute of Management. Dr. Chatterjee has trained more than 10,000 managers at Fortune 100 corporations globally and has served as leadership coach to political leaders and CEOs of major Indian organizations. The Bhagwat Geeta is timeless text of about 700 verses. It is a spiritual classic that originated in India many years before Christ was born. The book appeared as an episode in the Battle of Kurukshetra in northern India. The Bhagavad Gita takes the form of conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. The themes of conversation ranges from the vast cosmos to the innermost soul of human beings, often referred to the self. Timeless leadership weaves this battlefield conversation into a narrative on the problem faced by leaders such as Arjuna and the solution provided by Krishna from the perspective that is both compelling and contemporary. The conversation between Arjuna and Krishna is narrated by Sanjay to the blind king Dhritarashtra, who is eager to know the outcome of the battle. Thus, the book is narrative within a narrative, distilling the essential lessons or the sutras of each of Gita's 18 chapters into a meaningful message for leaders at all levels. The book challenges you to change the way you think in order to change the way you act, addressing the narrow-minded, anxiety-ridden lives of the modern business leaders. Timeless leadership teaches you to refocus your energy and change your perspective on the world and your place within it. Detailing how the sages' advices of the past can help you deal with the pressures of today's business world in order to better understanding and implement your vision, make better decisions, and much more. Here we only focus on third sutra, that is Karma Yoga. Arjuna thinks that the path of knowledge and actions are separate. Krishna points out that these two paths are complementary, like two sides of the same coin. Arjuna is looking for a simpler answer. He is not able to reconcile a life of contemplative knowledge and the path of terrible actions that the war demands. Krishna tells Arjuna that wisdom truly reveals itself in a unselfish actions. He points out that action is inevitable as it is inherent in the three modes of nature. He reveals to Arjuna the timeless cycle of actions in which work is an act of sacrifice for the perpetuations of the cycle. The sutra is an unfolding of Karma Yoga, or the timeless leader's path of enlightened actions. Arjuna's dilemma comes straight from his divided mind. He wants to split his own world into two halves, thought and actions. In many ways, Arjuna is like most leaders who are caught in the emotional bind where thought often do not translate into actions. Many CEOs state this as one of their usual problems. They say, I know that I have to urgently act on few things that are important to me as well as to the organizations, but I never get around to doing them. Very typically, the sore point of the inactions and indecision happen to be those that requires the CEO to go through the major emotional upheavals such as lifestyle changes, turnaround plans, confronting non-performance, or bringing negative news to the organization. Arjuna is unable to find a way out of the dilemma arising from his mental confusion, so he says, "Your advice seems inconsistent. O Krishna, shows me one path to follow to the ultimate good." Arjuna is bewildered because his is a binary mind where the world is divided into black and white. Like most leaders, Arjuna is confronting an ambiguous situation where there is no answer. So Krishna is faced with the challenge of evolving Arjuna's thought. He is saying to the Arjuna, while you are trying to think through a problem, do you see that your thinking is itself a problem? Arjuna's thinking is very linear. He is asking Krishna for a straight arrow answer. Tell me, Krishna, one thing for a certain so that I can follow one line of actions. Now Krishna has to rise to this challenge of evolving Arjuna's thought process. Krishna says to Arjuna, it is not possible to provide a one-point agenda based on the line thinking. Krishna deliberates on the two apparently different paths of contemplation and actions for two distinct kinds of people. These paths eventually lead to the same goal of realizing one's true potential. Depending on the temperament of the leader, the path may vary, but the goal is the same. Krishna says, at the beginning of time, I declared two paths, the intuitive path of knowledge of the spirit and the active path of selfless service. There are different strokes for different flocks. As they say, temperamentally, leaders may be classified into two categories, the contemplative and active. Therefore, to make progress, they follow a path that is true to their own nature. Krishna knows that Arjuna is an active warrior by nature. The warrior has temporarily become a warrior. He is inflicted with the warriors about not being able to do battle. For a warrior, it is a matter of shame to be unable to follow a decision line of action. Arjuna's lapse into inaction is a corroding in his vitality. Krishna understands this and definitely leads him out of his confusion. Krishna starts by clearly describing three different phases of work to the Arjuna. First, tells Arjuna that no one reaches enlightenment by not performing one's duty. All of us come into this world to make a contributions based on our capabilities. So merely renouncing actions and thinking of enlightenment will never get us there. By not performing work, you will never find freedom. By giving up actions, no one attains perfections. Krishna points out that the whole nature, including human nature, is nothing but conditioned actions. Our hearts beat at a specific rhythms. The planets move in their orbit with unerring motion. All nature participates in this grand symphony of well orchestrated actions. No one can rest even for an instant without actions, for one is always made to act by forces born of nature. Therefore, merely by being inactive, By restraining the organs of actions, one cannot prevent actions from happening. One may sit silently in a room and yet be full of noisy, sense-based thought. That's only a pretense of silence. In short, Krishna says inaction is nothing but hypocrisy. Arjuna's so-called inaction is also a negative action against the dharma of a warriors, whose duty is to act in the battlefield. Arjuna's indecision is also a decision to do nothing about defending his cause. Krishna makes this abundantly clear. Just restraining the organs of actions, yet thinking of sense objects, is nothing more than pretense of renunciation of actions. Thus, Krishna established that conscious actions is far superior to unconscious inactions. He advises Arjuna to perform his obligatory duties. By delightfully performing one's obligatory actions, a leader moves to the next stage of evaluations at work, the stage of effortless actions. As the leader begins to work with deep attention, work becomes more engaging. Attention makes any work engaging. Work we love to do never tires us. Such work brings us to a state of niskam, or the experience of effortlessness. At this point, the mind enters a steady flow state. The peace of mind gives us a sense of our true nature. Therefore, Krishna says that energetic, selfless work gives us a glimpse of who we are. In the state of effortlessness actions, we still work very hard, and yet we do not feel the drudgery, as our being transcends our physical nature, and we reclaim the experiences of the higher dimensions that is inside us. Krishna passes on to Arjuna the ultimate secret of the Karma Yoga. He helps Arjuna to discover the effortless principle that work spontaneously through us when we are engaged in a selfless actions. It is not the actions itself, but the spirit behind the actions that makes the action effortless. A cranky oil machine cannot achieve frictionless movement until it is greased and oiled properly. The spiritual essence in Karma Yoga is like this frictionless movement. To convey the timeless spiritual essence of an action, the ancient psychologists of India often used the word Karma Yoga. This word does not have a literal translation in English. This compounded word loosely means work that is linked with the transcendental spirit. Krishna defines worship as the performance of actions for the unfolding of the spirit of our being toward the greater perfections and higher state of consciousness. This state of perfections is not outside ourselves, but is in implicit state of our being. Thus, worship implies body, mind, senses framework is but a partial expression of our spiritual wholeness. This wholeness is described as the state Purnatva, or the fullness of our spiritual being. Purnatva is heightened awareness of our own reality. The ultimate goal of all work is to unfold the Purnatva of a human being. Thus, the value of work is understood in terms of human development and not merely material output. Timeless leaders do not see their work as mere activity, but rather as a calling. For them, work is a means of transformations of conscious. As Krishna draws Arjuna's attention to the timeless cycle of work, where all actions is a sacrifice for a higher cause. In simple language, yajna is self-sacrificing work in the spirit of welfare for all. The two fundamental aspects of yajna are sacrifice and service. Timeless leaders have a clear comprehension of the yajna spirit that they give before they take. By giving without expectations, they spontaneously create space for receiving from a bountiful and interconnected universe. A leader's whole life is a yajna. This is a very principle behind one's growth as a person. By forgetting their own narrow concern and in being of a services to the others, leaders begins to live in their conscious, the timeless cycle of work. The privileges of leadership comes with enormous responsibility. Leaders have to live not only for themselves but also for others who choose to follow them. This is timeless psychological truth. Most men and women imitate what their leaders do. Krishna is arousing Arjuna to accept the fact that as the greatest living warrior of his time, it is Arjuna's responsibility to leave a legacy of bravery for others to emulate. Whatever the leader does, the others may imitate. Whatever he sets up a standard, the others emulate. According to Krishna, a leader is able to move the masses because he is fully able to live his swadharma or the law of being. It is better to die doing one's own dharma, for another's dharma is a fragment with fear. Swadharma is nothing but the law of one's being. A leader is able to live his swadharma when he knows both his strengths and his weaknesses, but yet able to act from his strength. Leaders gain power from profound self-knowledge and complete self-acceptance when they are completely comfortable with who they are. Leaders are able to accept others as they are. Rightness is another expression of Swadharma. Ordinarily, a rightness means ethically right actions. In worship, an action has no value in itself. It takes its value from the force it represents. All actions has a certain purpose behind it. Leadership actions is a statement of leadership purpose. In the ordinary state of consciousness, it is difficult for us to think of work as a sacrifice. It is equally difficult for us to work unselfishly. Krishna understands this, so he makes it simpler for Arjuna. Dedicate the results of all your actions to a higher consciousness. As if Arjuna is able to do it, he will be free from the feverish anxiety that comes from anticipating the results of an action. Thus, free Arjuna will be able to gain access to his immortal soul self. Krishna says that dedicating the fruits of all actions to me with mind centered on the self from desires and ego, fight free from the mental fever. This immortal self is nothing but our soul. This mind is subtler than the body, and the intellect is subtler than the mind, but the soul is the most subtler aspect of our identity. The soul is covered by desire, as fire is covered by smoke, as mirror is covered by dust, as an embryo is enveloped by the womb, so the soul is relieved in desires. Desiring is nothing but Fabrice's mind that can be calmed down by working without anxiety or fuss. When we are able to dedicate our work to a higher cause, we get strength to work with peace and calmness. When we are out of the gravitational pull of desire, we are like a spacecraft that has acquired enough escape velocity to move effortlessly in space. Dedicated, desireless work without fever or fuss gives us the speed of clarity. When a leader accesses clarity of soul at work, his work enters the timeless cycle of actions. Hope you have liked this long explanation of Karma Yoga in Timeless Leadership, 18 Leadership Sutras from the Bhagwat Geeta. Thank you.